if you can make people feel included in the business, safe, part of a community and respected, no matter what their position is, then you get extraordinary performance. I like to think that whatever I've done is finished and the best is still ahead. New technologies appear, new players appear and generate growth that nobody forecast.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Learning from Leaders series. I'm happy to be joined like every time by my dear friend, Peter Van Am, that is with us here in Geneva. And we have the honor and privilege to welcome today the chairman and CEO of Bentley Motors, Mr. Adrian Hallmark. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Hallmark. And without further notice, I'll give the floor to you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Luc, and it's wonderful to see you all again, and especially you. I know you're in Munich today, not Geneva, but we can be together virtually, and that's fantastic. Many things happening around the world. Geneva, Switzerland just announced they're going out of any kind of lockdown, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about something very exciting, which is Bentley Motors and Adrian Hallmark. And Adrian, I have so many questions for you, but I want to start with a question actually for our students, because we would like to know just what our students think of when they hear Bentley. So I'll ask now if we can pull up a few options for you, and if we can ask you all, what do you think of when you hear the name Bentley? And a couple of options that we have in mind for you is luxury. I already see somebody reacting and saying the same thing. Luxury, prestige, heritage, performance, design, sustainability, exclusivity, or in the eventual case, I don't know Bentley. I hope nobody will say that, Adrian, but we'll see. So we'll get all these answers in. You have the poll right up there. You can answer. We'll leave it up for a few minutes. And now over to you, Adrian. We always start and we ask, how are you and where are you joining us from?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you and the whole cohort from EU. I'm very well, thank you. I'm COVID-free. I'm at work and I'm here at Crewe in Cheshire, which is close to Manchester in England. And Crewe has been the home of Bentley for some 75 years of car production. So it's a very historic site, but it's full of new technologies and it's going to now be converted to something completely different, which we'll talk about later.
What a fantastic story. You know, we've seen car brands, you know, from more than 100 years ago to today, gone through all kinds of evolutions. But one evolution that they've gone through is that many have, you know, removed their production to other places, or they have separated production from marketing and sales and so on. How come that that hasn't happened at Bentley?
It's a good question. And ironically, I'll start with the second part of your question to answer. So until about 3 weeks ago, in fact, the new year, sales and marketing for Bentley was on a separate site. Now, not too far away, but it was maybe 20 kilometers. But we've just invested significantly in the Crewe site. We built multiple new buildings to get ready for our electrification journey. And we brought 350 people that were off-site back into the center. So just as a little bit of context, we are about 4,500 employees, a 3 billion turnover company, and everything is on one site now. Every single thing that we do.
I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and this question about some companies have moved production off-site or components off-site. Of course, we have suppliers, but most of the added value in our cars is actually made here in Crewe, because the skills, the technologies and the craftsmanship that are required for our interiors, our woodwork and our W12 engine, for example, which is highly complex, those skills are not easy to subcontract to others, and they are our unique selling points, and we have to keep them strategically in our own control.
Yeah, it's really amazing to hear that, and you might wonder why different companies make different decisions on that front, because that's really going against the trend, let's say, in the car industry. Is it because Bentley is such a highly prestigious, luxurious, high-end, highly value added product, or it has to do more with, let's say, the heritage, the fact that it comes from England and you want to keep it there?
I'd say I'll answer it more dispassionately than emotionally, if I could. So first of all, we believe it's absolutely crucial for a luxury brand that there is authenticity, there is history for the brand, and that the construction of any product or goods or services has to be done by craftsmen and craftswomen at the highest possible standard. So that is a general statement. But also, from our perspective, we have developed skills over decades. In certain areas of the company, we've got from grandparents down to children working in the same business, not on the same place. So this doesn't happen overnight. It's very difficult to get some of the skills that we have. But the rational argument is very simple. If we looked to minimize the cost of every component, like we would have to if we're a high volume, lower price brand, then we may have to outsource more. But if you like, we can both afford the higher skills that go into our cars. And in fact, it's those higher skills that create the higher value to the customer. We don't just charge a lot of money for low quality objects. The reason our cars are expensive is the quality of them is far and above that of a volume vehicle.
Yeah, I would love to, believe you on your word, but I would also love to try. We'll leave that for another time. But Adrian, one question, of course, that's on everyone's mind is, how normal are operations again after what has certainly been 2 very tumultuous years?
Yep. Well, first of all, if we go back to the beginning of the lockdown in the UK, as you know, we were slow to lock down in the UK as a country. But having lived in Europe for many years and commuting each week, weeks before UK lockdown, I could see what was happening in Italy and indeed in France. And we as a team took the decision to shut the factory before the government had made the decision to close the economy down. And we did that to protect people. It certainly wasn't to protect our business revenues, because it did the opposite. We closed for 7 weeks and immediately put in place 250 changes to the site. One-way systems, screens, hand cleansing. We managed to secure personal protective equipment when nobody else could through the group, which was fantastic. And we got back to work earlier than anybody else as well. And since we got back to work in May 2020, having closed for 7 weeks, we've not lost a day, an hour, or a minute because of lack of availability of people, semiconductors, or parts. The crisis team we put in place have managed this brilliantly. And we're very lucky, but we also worked very hard to achieve that result.
There's a moral lesson there, isn't there? Which is to say that surely when you took the decision to close down early, before the government forced you to, that at that point that was an ethical decision. This was the right thing to do. Yep. But equally, it tells you that doing the right thing ultimately does pay off, because of almost the same reason, you could open up more quickly again and sustainably through the crisis.
Absolutely, and we'll talk maybe more about this when we get to the questions. But I'm a firm believer, having worked from a young guy doing part-time work all the way through to my job today, that if you can make people feel included in the business, safe, part of a community, and respected, no matter what their position is, then you get extraordinary performance. And we took the view the most important thing was the people, and we made it really clear: we want you to feel safer at work than you do at the supermarket, than you do on the public transport, than even you do at home. And we did testing before anybody else did, 650 tests per week, PCR, and all of these controls, and it's been brilliant. And the whole team trusts the company's intent. And we had record sales in 2020, despite closing for 7 weeks, and we had record sales in 2021 as well. So it hasn't stopped us actually growing.
That's incredible. Do you think that is because we talked last year or 2 years ago to the head of LVMH watches, and he said, I felt that there was some sort of urge for people sort of comfort buys. So the fact that after lockdowns, they wanted to treat themselves to something nice. Is that the reason, or what is the reason that you had record sales, you think?
it's interesting because we've also done some special projects during lockdown and had direct access to customers. So I can give you straight from the mouths of the billionaires that we've sold the following cars to what they think. So we did 12 cars called Baccarat. If you want to Google it, you'll see what we mean. Our cars are about, in francs, 220 to 350,000 francs on average. Wow. These were 2 million francs, only 12 of them. And we sold them all during lockdown, all on Teams calls or Zoom calls. And all of those millionaires and billionaires that bought them engaged with us, spec'd the cars, saw the designs and made the commitments. And we asked them, during all this craziness, why would you still be looking? But, you know, it's a dangerous question. Why are you still thinking of buying this vehicle when all of this craziness is going on? And their view was, life's too short. Who knows what's going to happen at the end of this, when it will be? I have the funds. This is my passion. I may as well live when I can. When can I get my car? And we've seen a little bit of that in the mere millionaires, as we call them, the regular customers, as we've gone through the last year or two. So it's not panic buying, it's people revaluing things. They're not going on expensive holidays. They're not going out to restaurants on a regular basis. And suddenly personal mobility feels safe. It's against all of the futurist trends that we've heard over the past 5 to 10 years on mobility, and not just in the luxury sector. This is true right the way through the car market. I'm not saying there isn't a role for future mobility solutions, but this shock has made people reappraise. It's made us think about supply chains. It's made customers feel different about personal mobility again.
Yeah, I have to say that rings true to me, Adrian. We made the decision in our family to buy the car for a first time. But unfortunately, it'll be more something like a Dacia than a Bentley. Maybe one day we'll get there. But let's talk about how exciting Bentley is. Let's talk about what it means to our students, and let's maybe pull up the results from the poll, because there were quite a few options to choose from. What do they connect the Bentley brand with, if you will? And we'll see those results come up in just a second. And you see there straight away, I don't know if you can see it already, almost half of the people say, for me, first means luxury, then prestige and heritage. I mean, among those, you're looking at 90% of the answers together with exclusivity. So are you happy about that? What does Bentley mean to you? And what would you have liked to see come up top in this poll?
I would be surprised if those attributes were lower than they are. Why? Because the company is 102 years old, and for about 102 years, we've built exclusive, expensive luxury cars. Actually, the lowest score is sustainability.
Actually, the lowest score is, I don't know Bentley, 0%. So everybody knows Bentley.
Well, that's a good thing, then. That's even better. But the lowest visible score, it looks like it's sustainability or design, but let's say sustainability. At the end of this discussion, I'd be curious as to whether people have a different view of our sustainability credentials, even though we're just at the beginning of a journey. And we'll come back to that later, but that doesn't surprise me. And I don't know Bentley 0 is a nice result.
That's wonderful. I think everybody knows, and they'll know much more about it soon. And we want to get into that question of sustainability. But before we do, I know another interesting thing about Bentley is that just like EU Business School, you could say it's very international, despite, of course, being home in England. You are active, I think, pretty much you're sold in every major city in the world, I suppose. 16,000 cars. You mentioned 16,000 new record sales. Where do you think Bentley's headed in terms of its market? Who's going to buy Bentley in the future? And I talk about mostly geographically.
Mm-hmm. So we are very, very well balanced. It's one of the strengths of the Bentley brand. So if I break the world up into 4 major regions, if you take the Americas, last year we actually sold 14,564 cars, to be precise. About 4,000 were in America, 4,000 were in China, 4,000 were in what we call the old EU, which includes the new EU plus the UK.
Okay.
And 4,000 cars were sold in the rest of the world. And the balance is incredible. So we've got four, literally, virtually almost equal regions. When I look to the future, if you look at China, the rate at which it has grown, at some point in the next 2 to 5 years, it will become the #1 market.
Of course.
But every time we think that, America grows again, because if you look at the absolute number of high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals, which is an early warning or an early indicator of our future potential, even though the rate of growth in China is high, the actual number in America is still the highest. It's still the richest country in the world from an individual wealth perspective. So I think, first of all, we have a balanced portfolio geographically. Last year we grew 31%. It was pretty much the same in every region, and it was also pretty much equal across every model. So we call it symmetrical growth. Equal growth by a model level and equal growth from a regional level, and we don't see any major distortions in the next 3 to 5 years in that overall market structure.
It's quite interesting because, of course, we've been hearing for more than a decade, maybe 2 decades, that like China in the East was the next economy was going to take over. In fact, I think the FT calculated by 2020 that for the first time in 200 years, the first time since the Industrial Revolution, emerging markets, including China, had a larger share of global GDP than industrial or previously industrialized markets like Europe and the US. But is your assessment that you have that sort of synchronous growth or symmetrical growth, is that also a way to say that maybe that fast growth that we've seen in China, that's sort of coming back down?
No, it's just that at the top end, I think you have to separate or stratify the economy. So if you take luxury brands and high-end products and high-tech products, then that growth is quite different to lower down the economic value chain, if you like. So if you look at China, the expansion of manufacturing and new technologies is colossal. But the growth at the top end in America is also strong. I think if you look at the industries and the technologies that have emerged and boomed over the last 10 years, even crypto coin, bless it, or cryptocurrencies, let's say, every time we think we've got the model understood, new technologies appear, new players appear, and generate growth that nobody forecast. So you can never say that the world is predictable and will grow, although we believe economic growth over the next 5 to 10 years will continue strongly, subject to the occasional correction. That China's growth is phenomenal, but it's slowed down. But still, I think that you should check this fact. But the last time I looked at this, probably 5 years ago, 6% growth on the China economy, just 6%, that value in dollars is bigger than the total GDP of Holland.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And you see that, of course, continue. I wonder, by the way, you mentioned NFTs or crypto at least. Are we ever going to see, or are we already seeing Bentley cars in NFT? Is that ever going to be a market for you?
Not yet, but I would never say never.
Okay, very well. I want to move to a very exciting news about Bentley now, because incredibly, if we were having this conversation in 2030, then basically we would be talking about an electric vehicle only company. Mm-hmm. Whereas today, of course, and heritage-wise, always Bentley was known for its big motors, but internal combustion engines. Tell us more about that. You're going to be making only electric cars.
Yeah, we're on a very transformational journey. So I'll just make one comment about where we're starting from before we go through this transition. We are 102 years old. We are the 12-cylinder engine company. I'll just give you one statistic. We launched the Continental GT, the two-door coupe. The first ever one was in 2003. At that time, before then, we were selling 1,000 Bentleys a year, roughly. We got that to 10,000 per year within 5 years, and they were all 12 cylinders. Since 2003, up until today, we've sold more 12-cylinder engines, and this is true, than all other manufacturers combined since the beginning of the automobile, not since 2003.
Wow.
So in less than 20 years, we have sold more than half of all the 12-cylinder engines ever made.
I mean, you're saying you've got the goose with, or the hen with the golden egg, and yet you're going to throw it away.
That's why I make that point first. We're not throwing it away. There's no way we can continue this way. So then you're faced with a dilemma. Legislation and ethical considerations mean we know that we aren't the biggest polluter, but we also know that there are technologies now that will enable us to still deliver the kind of experience that the Bentley owner wants. Now, performance wasn't high on the poll, on your student poll, but to give an indication, our 12-cylinder engine, 660 PS and 900 Newton meters of torque, and a GT will do 207 miles an hour. And to get a 208 miles an hour McLaren, which is supposed to be a performance car, the Speedtail is limited edition, they're nearly £2 million. Our GT is £160,000. So what we deliver is this extraordinary package, but in 8 years' time, we can't sell those. So we have to reinvent the brand. But then the question is, will customers follow? Can customers imagine an electrified Bentley future? And we've studied that and we've worked with them. So before we made this bold decision to go fully electric, we checked very carefully and reviewed. And I've got no doubts that we'll be successful. It's not without risk, but our customers are ready for a high performance, high value electric product from Bentley.
Well, let's see. We can now do a second poll, perhaps, Adrian. And I guess the poll can be seen in two ways, either literally, namely, the poll question is, what kind of mobility do you want to use in the future? What primary mode of transportation, and this is a question to the students, of course, to all of you, what primary mode of transportation would you like to use or own in the future? And you see there are all the options. You see electric car, internal combustion engine car, motorbike or scooter, bicycle or step, combination of all or none. Basically, you want to walk or take public transportation only. And I guess that's a literal part of the poll. Let's see what people are answering. And let's find out if the students are, well, it looks like, at least half are saying that they are looking forward to own an electric car or a combination of all the above. So I suppose there are some possible future Bentley owners among our students, and actually very few would not see themselves owning or using a car. So I do think we're looking at a car future. And in that regard, Bentley has been around for 100 years, basically almost since the car was first around. How do you see the next 100 years or the next 50 years? What do you think the role of the car will be when our grandchildren live?
I think it's very difficult to predict, especially 100 years. But I'll have a go at 20 to 30, if I may, if we can just reset the time frame. I always have to negotiate objectives. Sorry about that. So in the next 20 to 30 years, I think two major things will happen. First of all, instead of electric vehicles being the minority of cars on the road, they will become clearly the majority of cars on the road. But the electric vehicles will move away from lithium ion, as it is today, the current battery technology, to a much safer, less combustible, lighter, and more efficient battery technology, particularly solid state. There's other experiments going on as well, but the big breakthrough toward the end of this decade is solid state batteries. So EVs definitely will pick up the huge majority and decarbonize the streets in terms of vehicle population. At least in the UK, just as an indicator, 98% of cars are scrapped after 20 years. So if you take a 20-year period, you can imagine that refresh of the fleet will be radical. And it's similar in most European countries. The second thing is that new technologies will come into place. So there's a lot of talk about hydrogen, which is a great idea in one sense, but it doesn't exist in natural form that we can use. You have to put a lot of energy into something, steam or seawater, for example, to produce hydrogen. And if that energy comes from burning fossil fuels, it is the most inefficient system, because you burn fossil fuels to create another fuel that you then burn. I mean, even Elon Musk calls it fuel cells I wouldn't go that far, but it is not viable unless the whole energy grid is totally from renewables and zero carbon. But when you do get hydrogen, if you can get hydrogen, then for certain uses, a liquid fuel is highly advantageous. It's a lot lighter than a battery. So I think EVs will dominate. New fuel types will start to emerge as we refresh the energy system. And I think you'll see a difference in regions. I think the places like Russia will be the last to move away from fossil fuels. But bizarrely, the Middle East is one of the most stringent CO2 legislative areas, although it produces a lot of the world's oil.
Like Norway.
So, but so you never know how it will develop, but I think there'll be regional differences too. And the next big change, I think, is the way that we use cars. So it's great to see that people want to own one. To be fair, today, most people don't own cars. And I know that Ivona has got some connections in the industry, or family does. Very few people buy cars cash. They lease them. They put them on finance. So technically, they have the use of them for a cost per month, and they commit to 3 years. So these new mobility solutions will allow you to, and today, you could just go rent a car for a day.
That's right.
In the future, there'll be more innovative subscription models that allow you to use a car when you need it and not be committed to long leases.
And is that okay for you too? Because I mean, at this point, owning a Bentley is a statement in itself. Would you like to see that change towards like using a Bentley?
I wouldn't say I would like or not like to see that change. I think you've got to, I'd look at it the other way around. I don't think our customers will look, I think our customers will continue to want to own the car for exactly the reason you said. Yeah. But I also think there's other customers that we don't even imagine yet that would also want to access our vehicles in an affordable way, even though it'd be relatively expensive, but less expensive than buying a brand new Bentley. So I think the mobility models could actually open up demand. And my final thought, and you can do this calculation, there's a lot of research on how much a car is used, and the average private vehicle is used 5 to 7% of the time. Otherwise, it's parked up. A taxi is used 70% of the time. So just imagine if you put a car into a mobility service and everything goes to mobility, and instead of 5% of the time, it's used 70. The average car today does about 15,000 kilometers a year. So now, in a 2-year period, you're doing 500,000 kilometers. You need to change the car. So you actually end up having to build more new cars because they're worn out. And so the industry can still grow even with these mobility services. So we're very positive as a Volkswagen Group and as Bentley itself, that there is a future business. It will be different, but it will still be there in ownership terms, leasing, etc. But there's also this mobility world, which is exciting and that we want to be a part of.
Yeah, it's very exciting indeed. And you already mentioned that perhaps we should go to switch it up to Ivona. Ivona, who is from North Macedonia and who has a personal preference, you said, for the Volkswagen Group. The reason, of course, being, I suppose, the same thing for you, Adrian, because Bentley is actually a part of the Volkswagen Group, and Ivona's family is a dealer of Volkswagen. I hope I can say that, Ivona, in North Macedonia. You had some questions about just that, didn't you? And I think you're on mute.
Yes, hello, everyone. I have a question. So, Bentley Motors belongs to the Volkswagen Group. Is it difficult for Bentley to defend its manufacturing costs, which include exclusive materials and craftsmanship within the group, that may be looking for synergies and cost effectiveness? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. It's a good question. And I think this is both one of our strengths and one of our constant challenges at the same time. So what do I mean? We are a part of the Volkswagen Group since 1998, and the first Continental GT back in 2003, which transformed the company, 10-fold increase in sales as a result of that generation of cars. That was only possible because of the Volkswagen Group. We were able to use components from existing technology platforms, subsystems, axles, etc. We made our own engine, our own body, but the air conditioning systems and some of these hidden and costly things to develop, we could take on board. But if you go forward 20 years, basically to today, we're in a completely different environment. And it's probably the most exciting time for this company and an opportunity that we've never seen before. Why? Because as a group, we are reinventing the technology platforms for all of our cars. And instead of us being absorbed into the group and having to take what was there, we have been involved in defining the technological standards, performance standards, that is, and attributes that are required in these new technologies to meet the needs of a future category-leading Bentley. So the components that we do take from the group, we can get them at a lower cost because they buy them in high volumes with global suppliers. And then everything that we do, the magic, the interiors, the bodies, and all of the refinement and drivetrain calibration that we do, that is all of our work. So we can do that without any interference from the group. So we've got this solid foundation at a lower cost than our other luxury competitors, and a core capability at Crew that allows us to create unique and differentiated products that makes us the biggest luxury brand in the marketplace already. And with electrification, we will step up craftsmanship, technology, performance, everything to a completely different dimension. So as I say, it is without question, apart from 1919, when W.O. Bentley started the company, I think this is the most exciting time in the company's history.
Yeah, and you're of course leading that company in that very exciting time. Your personal ties too, no, to Volkswagen and to Germany, the home country of Volkswagen. I believe you speak German, and you've worked, I believe, also in Germany. On a personal level, is that helpful if people sort of want to build a career, and even if your dream is to be one day the CEO of Bentley? Is it beneficial to sort of leave first your home and discover those new cultures and work in those places?
It's interesting. On personal journeys, I've got friends that have stayed from where they grew up and studied and had a career and been very happy. Some people just want to travel. Some people want to experience new cultures and do different things. And I never had a plan to get to this role particularly. But I always had a plan to improve myself. And for me, I love languages, and I always wanted to learn German. It's going back to when I worked at Porsche when I was in my late 20s as a young regional manager flying around the country. I just wanted to learn German. Then I wanted to work in Germany.
Not driving around I think you would want to be driving on the Autobahn if you had to go around the country in Germany then.
Well, no, this was regional manager in the UK. It was later that I worked in Germany. So yeah, I was always interested in language, always wanted to work abroad, and I've sought out opportunities, and I've pushed myself, and my family have been flexible enough to come with me, and we've given up certain things and we've gained way more. So yeah, I'd say anybody that's looking to develop a career, you've got to be flexible, you've got to have a clear view of how you want to grow and develop, but you can't pick a job and get it in 20 years time. You have to. It's not.
Although I imagine, you coming from the UK and having studied mechanical engineering, that to me sounds like, the base qualification for somebody who wants to make it in the UK car industry is to be an engineer, mechanical engineer, to study in the UK. So, in one way, you're the perfect Bentley CEO. In another way, you've got all of those tons of experience abroad. I mean, you've worked, I think, in 3 continents and different languages and so on, and for different companies as well. So Absolutely. Are you like Bentley combining heritage with a global identity?
It's a good question. I'd like to think so. I like to think that whatever I've done is finished and the best is still ahead. And you can't stop and keep looking back and say, aren't I great because I did that? You have to keep looking forward. So what can I do next? And as a company, that's our mindset. It's my personal mindset. And I think most successful people that I know, they're similarly driven. It's not that you don't enjoy what you've achieved. It's that you can't live in the past. Today is really important, but where you're heading is even more important. You've got to stay focused on what you believe in and what you want to achieve. And do what it takes to get there. And I wouldn't change a lot of what I've done, maybe one or two things.
I want to maybe bring in also Maria, who's based in Armenia. She's actually a part of the online campus. And Maria, I know you have a question about Bentley, but also I believe you have a question about Adrian's professional career. Might you ask that question perhaps first?
Mr. Hallmark, it was a pleasure listening to you. So my question is, what are you most proud of in your professional career, and why is this a particularly important achievement for you?
Okay. It's a difficult one, because I look back at things that I've achieved and I've never achieved them on my own. So when I say what am I proud of, it's what am I proud of being a part of that I've led, and that's been successful. And I've got several things, but they're all to do with achieving things that no one believed could happen. And I'll give you two examples, and both Bentley. So I was with Bentley 20 years ago. I came back 4 years ago, which is, I never thought I would do that in any company. 20 years ago, I was board member sales and marketing here, in my late 30s, full of optimism. And with a team, we were able to take the company from 1,000 sales a year to 10,000 in a 5-year period. We created a product strategy, we reinvented the brand, and we created a segment. And when we started with our mission to sell 10,000 cars, the total sales of all brands in the world in that price segment was only 3.5. So we wanted to sell 3 times more than the rest of the world combined, or the rest of the competitors combined. And we did it. And we had relentless belief, but it was calculated and we planned it. So that was a really proud moment. I think also when I got back here, we had the worst year in our history that I inherited. We've turned the company around this year. By the half-year point, we beat the profit of the best ever full year of the company. And the second half of our year, I can't give you the final numbers, but it wasn't worse than the first. So going from a company that couldn't function, getting through Brexit, COVID, turning it around to be profitable, and then being able to launch an investment program like we have, we've set this company up now for a decade. And now we've got to deliver on the innovations. And that for me, so what am I proud of? Growth. Taking complex situations, growth opportunities, making them understandable, making them actionable, getting people excited and delivering it. And it's just brilliant.
And that's there's a lot of lessons there, isn't there? Because that applies both to you as a person and in your career. Growth is something that you seek and that you get a sense of accomplishment from. And of course, it also does apply to our economy. I mean, like our whole economy is based on the idea of growth. We like that. We like to see that. We like to believe that we're going ahead. We're advancing. Now, of course, you also have to combine that with sort of the limited planet that we live on. And that has come into conflict more often in recent years. How do you see that? Because clearly you have a strategy about that. You said that already. I believe that there is room for growth, even as we face these environmental challenges.
Well, I think that actually for us, as a luxury brand, I think it's totally compatible. And why do I say this? So our strategy is not only about creating electric Bentleys. Our strategy, Beyond 100 is what we call it. It's all about becoming completely carbon neutral end to end. And so if we can decarbonize our whole business model, then growth is not a problem. And because we're so small, there were probably 80 million new cars sold globally last year. Every brand, every market, 80 million. We sold 14,500. So even if we stopped selling every car, it wouldn't make any difference to the impact of transport. But if we can neutralize the CO2, if we become carbon neutral genuinely, then we have freedom to grow. And we create a compelling case for luxury. It will cost more than a W12 solution, for sure, because the technology is more expensive. But it will attract different customers to the ones we've got today and some of the customers that we already have. I've got 2 friends that are both semi-retired in their 40s. that have got more money than I've probably earned in my whole career that wouldn't buy anything other than an electric car.
Yeah.
And they're desperate. Why are you so slow doing it? I'd love a Bentley, but I can't buy one. So I'm confident that whilst we'll lose some of our more traditional customers, we will open up opportunities in the future. And just one final point. Some people see constant growth as stressful. You said about the economy's needed. It's only stressful if you don't know what you're doing. If you don't understand your markets, if you don't understand your brand and your uniqueness in the market, and you can't find those niches and segments and profit pools to go attack, then of course it's stressful, because you're trying to sell the wrong thing into a market that doesn't exist. So I'm all about deep understanding of segments, customers, competitors, and constantly trying to reinvent and expand in places where the growth is almost inevitable. And that's the secret of real fast growth and success.
Yeah, and we see that, of course, and I see that, by the way, also in the questions that we're getting from students that are following us, lots of questions about sustainability. And Jose Pablo, for example, he's asking a question that I'm sure you've thought about, which is, are electric cars, are they really sustainable? Are the batteries in specific, the lithium-ion based batteries, are they really sustainable? You already mentioned that almost, right? You said like you have to be truly neutral, not just in carbon footprint, I suppose, but also in your more general environmental impact. How do you make that happen?
It's really interesting. If any of you have done studies on the CO2 footprint of a car company, you can access them online. There's plenty of studies being done. We break it into 4 steps. We've got raw materials and processing, vehicle assembly, vehicle usage over life, and vehicle recycling. And if you look at the CO2 that's created in each of those 4 steps, for a battery electric vehicle, it's about 35% of the total of the life of the vehicle. For a non-battery vehicle, it's less than half that. But when you get to the use phase, then the battery electric vehicle is less than half of the combustion engine phase. But to get to break even for an equivalent electric and combustion engine car, you're talking about 120 to 130,000 kilometers of use before the CO2 is less than the combustion engine.
You're making me feel better about buying an internal combustion engine car now, because I don't do that much mileage.
So, exactly. So the key, though, is if you can do all of that raw materials and processing with renewable energy and use less virgin material, i.e. put more recycled material into that front end, then you can neutralize or fully offset that initial component and raw material phase. And that's the game changer. So we're not just looking to decarbonize the tailpipes of our cars. Our factory, the assembly of cars, is already carbon neutral. We've achieved certification for 3 years, 40,000 solar panels, and buying certified renewable gas and renewable energy.
Is that the PAS 2060 standard? Lika from Georgia is mentioning that you're getting a certain certification. He's congratulating you on that.
Thank you. That's coming next, but this is Carbon Trust accreditation for carbon neutrality. So the ISO is the next phase, but yes, you're right.
And, let's maybe continue on that, because I noted also Carlos Molina from Panama, who's studying in Geneva, by the way. I may have seen you already in your Bentley in Geneva, because I know you come here quite often. Carlos, you had also a question about sustainability and trends in sustainability. Why don't you go ahead?
Yes, hello, sir, again. You have an incredible trajectory. You have had an incredible trajectory. So my question is the following. What challenges are the current market trends in sustainability and, for example, the launch of electric vehicles having on Bentley? How is Bentley addressing these changes while ensuring that its luxury customer experience and brand essence are not lost? Is performance jeopardized?
Okay, that's a good and rounded question. I think the first thing is that moving away from this dominant position with big engines that has really created the brand myth over the past 20 years is a big challenge. There's no question about that. So we've broken it down into stages. And so the way that we can maintain the essence of the brand is about high performance. Now, from your first poll, performance wasn't a high score. And that's correct, really. Even though our cars are fast, our customers don't buy them to go on racetracks. They don't buy loud exhaust for them. Our cars are bought for huge, well, many reasons, but our customers love the effortless nature of the acceleration, the quietness and refinement of our products, and the interiors. And they love their design, status design. So as we move forward, we start off our journey with hybridization. So we will create powerful hybrid powertrains that we'll launch over the next 3 years. And by 25, we will only sell electrified combustion combinations, plug-in hybrids. 25, we launch the first battery electric vehicle. And then every year for 5 years, we launch another one. So we do 5 in 5, 2.5 billion investment. And what I can guarantee is that the design of our cars will still be recognizable as Bentleys. So the first thing about keeping the authenticity of brand is the aesthetics. On the interior, the craftsmanship, as I mentioned, the technology, the user experience, things you can do in the car as well as drive, together with autonomous capability, this will move Bentley's offer up even another level. So it's not about, as I said about performance and growth earlier, we're not even worried about maintaining what we've got. We want to make it way better. And if you start with that mindset rather than defensive, then it opens up possibilities. And we challenge the team constantly to innovate in that space. So I have no worries about our ability to innovate. And because we're not going from all combustion engines on one day to all electric vehicles on the next day, it's a 5-year transition. Then it gives time for customers to adapt and adopt that new technology, and for battery performance and charging networks to mature even further, so that owning an electric vehicle is as simple or even simpler than owning a combustion engine vehicle.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stepped journey that we've set out on.
And we're very curious to see that happening. I believe the first one is coming out in 2026. Is that right?
But late 25, but yes, you'll see them in about 3.5 years.
Now, a more fun question, perhaps. 2 people are asking about, because you talk about performance, are talking about racing. Eva is asking, are you ever coming back to Le Mans? I suppose the 24-hour of Le Mans. And a similar question from Andrew Kassatli in Lebanon, who's asking, are you ever considering going into the Formula One? I suppose for that to happen, Formula One will first have to become Formula One electric.
Yeah, I think first of all, Formula One single-seater racing. I said earlier I would never say never, but I pretty much can guarantee never would Bentley go Formula One. It doesn't fit with our brand.
Yeah.
However, if you look to the history of the company, in the early years of Bentley, in the first 11 years of the company, before it was sold to Rolls-Royce, we won Le Mans 5 times. And we actually, and the Le Mans organizers will confirm, we helped to create the myth of Le Mans itself. And even the high street in Le Mans is now called Rue des Bentley Boys. In
So that
homage.
fits with the heritage, with the brands, with
Exactly.
everything.
Now, but for me, going back to Le Mans with a combustion engine, when we are fully committed to carbon neutrality, makes no sense. And there's no battery electric car that can run for 24 hours. So I think for us, electric endurance racing, when it's feasible, however that could be, swapping batteries, swapping cars, or higher performance batteries, that would be really interesting to us. But we have no official plans for it. And there's no technology roadmap in sight yet, but we'll keep looking.
It sounds to me a little bit that, going from internal combustion engine to electric, is like a little bit like converting yourself in a religious way, almost like where, you have to become a believer. And once you're a believer, it's like you never can imagine that you ever believed in anything else.
Yeah.
How was that transition for you? Because you've been in the car industry for so many years.
I don't know what the word is actually for me. I'm not a binary converter. So what do I mean? I'm lucky enough that I can afford the occasional nice car. I've owned a new Porsche Taycan Turbo.
Nice car.
What wonderful car. But I then sold it and bought a 2007 Brooklands Bentley Coupe with a 6.75 litre engine.
If you're trying to make us feel bad about ourselves, Adrian, it's working out because you've got wonderful cars.
Believe me, when I started out studying like your students, I couldn't even imagine one day being in the presence of someone that owned a Bentley, let alone actually owning one.
Right.
I've worked for it, and so can all of your students. You can never say never in that sense if you keep trying. But my point is, I went from probably the cleanest car from Porsche to a 13-year-old 6.75 litre V8 petrol engined Brooklands Coupe because I bought the Taycan for pleasure, but then I couldn't drive it long distances because I couldn't rely on the charging. But I still have a Fiat 500 electric that we use in Geneva, and it is fantastic. So today, for me, electric cars, when you've driven them, you love them. The drive experience, the quietness, and for pottering around a city, we only charge it once a week, overnight. It's brilliant.
That's
but
right.
if I have to rely on it to drive 650 miles, forget it. But in 5 to 10 years' time, that will be as easy as with the Brooklands.
And so in a way, your conversion, as you say, it's not binary, but it is an inevitability. And those that haven't joined the club yet will too very soon. And I suppose that your prediction, if I may venture to ask, is that one day Formula One in Le Mans and all the other iconic races will become electric.
Absolutely.
Before we close, I just want to ask you a few more personal questions, and our students too, actually. I'm taking here the question from Simon Kochurek, I hope I say that correctly, and Ritika Gupta. And they're asking about your skills that you need to develop either as a global leader or really just as somebody young that's starting out and that one day hopes to become a CEO. What are the main skills or traits do you think that you need to develop and hone when you're a young person?
I think you need to watch other people and watch them closely. I didn't realize it, but I've had lots of mentors in my life and they didn't realize it either. So I think one of my skills has been, I identify people that are really good at things and really bad at things. And I use them as reference points for me to grow and learn. I'm constantly looking for what I can do better, where I'm dissatisfied with my own performance or the way I approach things. And I do question myself always. I'm full of energy, but I'm also full of some doubt. I never believe I'm fundamentally right. And being confident enough to push in what you believe in, but being humble enough to be able to take feedback and think about it, do something about it, and adapt, I think is absolutely crucial. Of course, you've got to have technical skills, but I think the human skills, understanding that not everybody is motivated the same as you. Not everybody wants to rule the world or be a CEO or be a high-performing director. Some people just want to balance family and life and do a great job, and there's space for them in the workplace. So I think there's a human aspect to this that is really important on top of the technical side. Look for excellence, look for people that are good and bad, and avoid the things you don't want to be, and keep checking that you are being the person that you'd like to be working for and that you'd like to be led by.
It's a wonderful way to reflect on that. And Adrian, of course, you have now the luxury, let's say, to be able to look back and look at your journey and say what you've learned, but also, of course, be confident because, you made it. You became the CEO of a very exciting company, which must have been a dream. But along the way, you must have had many challenges too, and perhaps at some point lost faith in yourself or in the industry or any other aspect. How did you overcome those difficult moments?
I think there's two in particular that were the most difficult, and I won't go into the detail of what they were, but I'll give you the formula for correcting it. So sometimes it just doesn't work. You're in a situation, I can see it with people around me as well. You can be in a situation where no matter what your skills are, that the culture that you're in, you can never fully express or perform to your full potential for various factors. It could be that people feel threatened. It could be that, i.e., your superiors, that they feel that you're too challenging for them. It could be that they think you're not the right person for them to do what you want them to do. And in that situation, you need to be confident enough, first of all, to reflect on yourself. Should I change? And when you feel that you can't bridge that gap, you've got to go. And my biggest error in my career is hanging on in one particular role for probably a year to 1.5 years too long, and not listening to the signals, because I wasn't happy, and I wasn't able to fully exhibit or use all of my skills. And if you're in that position, you've got to give it enough time to make sure you've done all the efforts you can. But life is too short to be miserable. If you don't get on in the situation, do something else.
It's really fantastic advice. And my takeaway from this whole conversation, Adrian, is that, you have to dream big. You got to set stretch targets individually and as a company. You also have to, as a person, try and look for role models, people that can guide you along the way, that can mentor you. But also, if things don't go right, you have to dare to say stop and move on and do something else. I think those are wonderful lessons for today. And we learned so much about you. We learned a lot about Bentley. And we learned an incredible amount also about the car industry and where it's headed. So I want to thank you on behalf of everyone for joining us today. And we hope to see you again soon. We know it's possible because you shared that, both of your children actually are EU alumni. So I think that's the best testament of what a wonderful career that offers. But also, again, thank you to you for being part of the EU experience.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been good fun.
And then back over to Luc for the final word.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much, Mr. Hallmark. Pleasure as always. And if you want to repeat it one day, never say never. You will be able to come back, and we'll be happy to welcome you back. Congratulations as well on the new steps for Bentley. And I'm sure it's going to be a successful journey, and the company is well equipped with you at their head. Now, the future for the next step for learning from leaders is already in 2 weeks from now. February 23rd, we have a serial entrepreneur coming to talk to us, Khaled Kitali from Legacy. Lot of learnings again. And in the meantime, stay safe, everybody. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.